Yes, Redstone. The simple thing that allows you to either make doors or the game within itself. But there's one problem. What the heck do all these do? Why do we need 68 items? I don't know what a composter has to do with a funny red dot that makes pistons go brrr. So I'm going to explain each and every redstone item, starting with Number 1, redstone dust. Redstone dust is the main thing you need for redstone because it's redstone dust. The name is in it. Redstone dust can go any direction, powered from any direction. If it's going up a transparent block, it'll go for the middle, because a transparent block doesn't block the signal. And if you right click the dust, it'll become a dot, so it'll only power the block under it instead of all around. Number 2, redstone torches. Redstone torches can power items next to it and blocks on top of it as well. It can also be placed on the side of blocks, and it can be turned off if the redstone torch is powered. This means if you put a redstone torch under another redstone torch, it'll invert the signal. This is called a torch tower. Number 3, redstone block. A redstone block is basically the same as a redstone torch as a block, but it can't be turned off and it's movable. Number 4, repeater. A repeater, like the name, can repeat the signal of redstone dust. So if the redstone dust is at 1 and it connects to a repeater, bringing the signal back to 15. A repeater can also be right-clicked to add delay, so by default is 1 redstone tick. I'll be referring to redstone ticks as ticks in this video, but game ticks are 20 per second and each redstone tick is 2 game ticks. And each time you right-click the repeater, it'll add 1 tick to it, so 3 ticks on a repeater makes it a 4 tick repeater. Now real quick before we get any further in, the features shown in this video is mostly Java. Most of the stuff will also work on Bedrock, but there's some features that may not, so keep that in mind if you're learning for Bedrock. Number 5, Comparator. The Comparator can do 3 things. When it's in its base mode, the compare mode, if the signal strength is higher on the side than the back, it'll not give an output, but it's lower than the back, it'll pass right through. And if you right click it and put it in subtract mode, the signal strength on the side subtracts from the back, and gives out the correct signal in the front. Then for the third thing, comparators can read from containers, and some block state changes such as item frames. If the container has 0 items, it'll output nothing. If it's filled, it'll output a signal strength of 15. And if you want to know how many blocks it takes to give out a certain signal strength, I've left a link to a list of how many blocks it takes for each signal strength. Number 6, target block. Yeah, the target is just called a target, not a target block, but I'm calling it a target block in this video. The target block, when shot by an arrow, will give off a signal strength depending on how close to the bullseye it is, but that's not the only thing. The target block is a solid block that can also redirect for redstone, allowing you to run redstone in ways it shouldn't be ran without target blocks. Also, by the way, this script was written right before 1.21 came out, so I'm going to go over the 1.21 features later in this video as a separate section because I don't want to redo everything to fit it in. Number 7 to 11. Levers, buttons, and some pressure plates. These are pretty straightforward. The lever is a toggleable power source that can be placed on any side of the block and will also power the block. The button is the same, but instead of it being toggleable, it'll send out a signal for 10 ticks for a stone button and 15 ticks for a wooden button. Then the pressure plate turns on whatever a mob is on top of it, and the minimum time for it to stay on is 10 ticks. Also, wooden pressure plates will activate if any entity is on top of it, and wooden buttons will activate if it is shot by a projectile. Number 12 to 13, gold and iron pressure plates. These give different signal strengths depending on how many entities are on top of it. So the gold pressure plate, every entity adds 1 signal strength, so 5 entities is a signal strength of 5. Then for the iron pressure plate, every 10 adds a signal strength, so 50 entities gives a signal strength of 5. However, it's different for items. Editor me here, I was about to say something else, but it is wrong. Items are counted as separate entities, not how many items are in a stack. So you can have 11 stacks of items and it'll be the same as 11 separate items. Number 14 to 15, Sculk sensor and Shrieker. The Sculk sensor can detect any noise in an 8-block radius and powers anything around it, and it outputs a signal strength depending on how far away you are. So the further you are, the lower the signal strength will be. And if you walk on walls, Sculk can't hear you. So if you're in a deep dark, use will no, who am I kidding? You're just gonna run to every chest and hope you don't get killed. And you can also waterlog it to remove the sound. And the Sculk Shrieker really isn't a redstone component, but it's in the tab, so the Sculk Shrieker is activated if a Sculk sensor is activated in an 8-block radius of it, or if you stand on top of it, and the shriek sounds like this. Number 16, Calibrated Sculk Sensor. The Calibrated Sculk Sensor is very different than the Sculk Sensor, but it's very similar as well. The main difference is that if you input a different signal strength into the input side, it'll only detect stuff on that signal strength. Now again, I'm not going to go over each and every sound, so I'll leave a link to that, but signal strength 1 is footsteps. Instead of being on for 2 seconds like the regular Sculk Sensor, it's only 1 second. And the only other difference is that you can detect sounds from up to 16 blocks away instead of 8. Bonus, wireless redstone. If you stack Sculk sensors with trapdoors next to them 7 blocks apart from each other in the air, it can access wireless redstone. Or you do this instead of just a long wire of dust and repeaters? I don't know, it looks cool. Number 17, Amethyst. Amethyst is a block that makes sounds when you step on it. The real reason why it's here is if you place a block of Amethyst next to a Sculk or a calibrated Sculk sensor, it'll take the signal that was inputted, so if you input 8 blocks away, it'll be 1, and mimics it, making another noise another Sculk sensor can pick up and then passes it along. Number 18, wool. Basically, Mojang is telling you to use color code in your redstone, so go do that and don't end up in this mistake of everything being one color. Also, wool is just nicer in redstone, but you can also use any block that allows different colors. Number 19 to 20, tripwire hook and string. If you place 2 tripwire hooks and connect it with a string, and then walk over that string, the tripwires will detect that and activate redstone either on the block or the tripwire itself. And tripwires can be as long as possible and overlap with other tripwires, as long as there's string connecting both sides. You can also use shears to deactivate tripwires. Number 21, Lectern. The Lectern can hold any book and quill you put in there, whether it's signed or not. And if the comparator is on the back, it'll give an output depending on how far in the book you are. And if the book is 15 pages, you can use it as a signal strength book because each page will correspond to what signal strength will output. It also has an observer outpost, so you can detect that way as well as someone flip the page, but we'll get back to observers in a little bit. Number 22, daylight detector. Daylight detector can detect if it's day, or if it's right clicked, it'll detect if it's night. That's about it. And it's kind of complex for me to try to say which each time of the tick of the day corresponds to. So here's a graph, and I'll also leave a link to the graph in the description. Basically, it detects the brightness and darkness. And if you push a block over it, it'll detect if there is a 1 signal strength change in the brightness or darkness. Number 23, lightning rod. You may think the lightning rod has no redstone mechanics, which is what I thought, but lightning rods will actually give off a redstone signal if it's struck by lightning either during a storm or when it hit by a trident. Number 24, pistons, let's go! The piston, not the sticky piston, can just move blocks and can be placed in any direction. It can't pull blocks though, it can only push. And the max it can push at a time is 12, so if you do 13 or more, it can't push that. Number 25, sticky pistons. The sticky piston is the exact same as the piston in almost every way. The key thing is that it can pull blocks this time, and if you one take a piston, it'll spill out its block instead of retracting it as well. Just do note that this is a Java feature. You can't spill out blocks on Bedrock. Number 26 to 27, slime and honey. Slime and honey are the exact same, so I'm going to be referring to it as slime. The whole point of slime blocks existing is that they can grab blocks next to them in themselves. So if you connect blocks next to them with slime and push the blocks, it'll all push with just 1 piston as long as there's only 12 blocks. And then the difference with slime and honey is that one doesn't stick to the other, allowing for slime and honey to be placed next to each other and not stick. Bonus, QC, Java only. QC, or the correct name, quasi-connectivity, is what happens when you power 2 pistons at once. This is because Mojang used the code for the door in the piston, so if you power a block above a piston and update it using another piston at the same time, that's QC. Very useful for doors. Number 28, dispenser. The dispenser can dispense items from the container inside of it, which is a 9-slot container. It can also throw projectiles, spawn mobs, spawn water, and put armor on entities. Number 29, dropper. The dropper is basically the same as the dispenser, however it can only drop items, so if you put projectiles in there, it'll just drop the item instead of launching it. And the dropper can put items directly into containers. The dispenser is unable to do this and requires you to put a hopper under it. And speaking about hoppers, number 30 to 31, hoppers and chests. The hopper is a 5-slot container that can move items from out of other containers, items dropped on it, and move it to either other hoppers or other containers. So if you have a line of hoppers going from one chest to this chest, and put items in the top chest, it'll end up in the bottom chest. Hoppers can't travel upwards though, so you have to use other means to do that. Hoppers can also be turned off if you power it, so items can't be picked up or leave it. Then the chest is pretty straightforward. It's a 27-slot container which requires air over it to be open and is not a full block. And if you place another chest next to it, it becomes a double chest, which has 54 slots. Number 32, barrel. Barrel is another container, but it's limited to 27 slots like the normal chest. However, this time it can be opened if there's blocks on top of it, and it's a full-size block instead of being a pixel short like the chest. Number 33, Chiseled Bookshelf. The Chiseled Bookshelf is a bookshelf that you can put any book into. So if you have a written book or enchanted books, you can put them in the the bookshelf, or you can make designs with it. Hold up. What does this have to do with it being in the Redstone tab? Well, the Chiseled Bookshelf can give off a comparator output, but it's the most jankiest thing I've ever seen in Redstone. It doesn't detect how many books are in it, or what's the highest book. It detects what the latest book slot you put the book into, even if you take the book out afterwards, or if there's already other books. That means if you take an empty Chiseled Bookshelf and put a book in slot 6, then take the book out to make it empty again, it'll just become a signal strength 6 source block until you put in another book. And this is the same in a filled bookshelf. So if you put a book into slot 1, the other slots are all filled, it'll display a signal strength 1. Number 34, Furnace. Furnace is more of a useful block than a redstone block, but it's got some redstone stuff in it. First off, I'm going to assume y'all know what the furnace does, so I'm not going to explain it. Now for the redstone stuff, if you connect hoppers going into the furnace, there's 3 things it can do. If you connect hoppers going into the top of the furnace, it'll be the item input. So if you try to put fuel in that input, it won't go in the fuel slot. To do that, you need to put another hopper on the side of the furnace. So you put fuel into that hopper, it'll actually go into the fuel input. Just make sure you don't mess it up so your stakes isn't smelting your bamboo. And if you put a hopper on the bottom of the furnace, it'll output the output items into that hopper. Also gives off a comparator output depending on how full it is. So each full slot is 5 signal strengths. Number 35, Trap Chest. Trap Chest is the same as a chest. However, when you open it, it gives an output of 1. And a little known feature is that if more than one person is opening it, they'll give off a higher signal strength. So if 3 people are looking inside of it at once, it'll give off a signal strength of 3. Number 36, Jukebox. Jukebox is a block that when you right click with a music disc, it'll play it. You probably already knew this, but did you know that it can interact with redstone as well now? If you put a hopper on the jukebox and put a music disc in that hopper, it'll go into the jukebox and play it. It'll also give off a comparator signal strength depending on which disc it's playing. And again, a resource will be linked with a list showing what music goes to which signal strength. And when that song is done playing, if there is a hopper under the jukebox, it'll automatically dispense the discs into that hopper. Number 37, Observer. Observers, like the name suggests, observes what happens in front of it and sends a pulse out the other end if it sees change. And to be technical of what it sees, it detects block state changes, as in a crop growing or a trapdoor closing. So basically, observers can detect any form of change in front of it. And a bonus thing, if you connect 2 observers looking into each other, because it'll detect each other, it creates a 1-tick clock. Oh yeah, did I mention observers give off a 1-tick false? In fact, did I mention what 1-ticking is? Bonus, 1-ticking, kind of Java only. 1-ticking is a feature more useful in Java instead of Bedrock, because the whole point of why people use 1-ticking is because if you 1-tick a piston, it'll spit out its block. And this is only in Java, but 1-ticks do exist in Bedrock, it just can't do this. I'm getting ahead of myself. What is 1-ticking? 1-ticking is when a power source gives out a pulse that lasts for 1 redstone tick. And the easiest way to make a 1-tick generator is by using an observer. But if you put a lever on a piston and power the piston like that, it'll give out a 0-tick pulse. And what's 0-tick, you ask? Well, if you want to learn about 0-ticking, you can look it up. I'm not going over 0-ticking in this video. More about 1-ticking though. Not all items can be 1-tick, such as torch. Yes, there's a way to 1-tick it. I'm not going to go over that. There's a circuit and a comparator, but a repeater won't affect it unless it's set for a delay, in which case it'll just extend the pulse. And now, real quick intermission to talk about the 1.21 items. In the new update of 1.21, there's 6 new items in the redstone tab: copper bulbs, crafter, and the decorated pot. First off, the copper bulb, or bulbs because there's 4 of them. The copper bulb is a toggleable light source, so if you power it once, it'll stay on. Power it again, it'll turn off. This can have 2 forms of outputs: a comparator output, which would give out the full signal strength of 15 when it's on, or observer output, which will detect it whenever it turns on or off. Also, the oxidized versions don't affect the redstone, it'll only affect the light output. Now the crafter. The crafter is an automatic crafting table. So first off, if you open it up, you can right click slots to make them just not exist, and items will skip them. Next, if you put in items and try to take out the crafted item, you can't. You have to give it an input for that. And of course, this accepts hopper inputs as well. And it can work as a dropper and craft straight into containers. This also has a comparator output of 1 to 9 depending on how many slots are filled. And taking out slots will make it go up as well. This can be placed in any direction, so it can shoot items upwards if you wanted to. And now finally, decorated pot. The only really redstone thing about this is that it can hold items and give a comparator output and interact with hoppers. That's really it. It's a pot that can hold a stack of items, and depending on how many items there are, it'll go from signal strength 1 to 15. So that's all the 1.21 items. So let's get back to the 1.20 redstone blocks. Number 38, note block. Note blocks, again like the name suggests, is a block that when powered plays a note. And depending on what block that note block is on, it'll be a different instrument, and depending on if you turn it, it can be a different note on that instrument. Meaning that with 25 different notes, 23 different instruments, that means a note block can store 72 bytes of information. Maybe I should make a video on this. Anyways, a note block can play different instruments depending on what block it's on. And if you right click it, you tune it to any of the 25 notes. And for the 50th time, I'm not going over what block goes to which 23 different instruments, so there'll be a resource linked in the description. And for the final thing a note block can do, if you put one of the 7 heads on top of it and play the note, it'll play the sound of what mob head is on the note block. Number 36 to 40, Composter and Cauldron. Cauldron and Composter are very similar in the sense that they can do basically the same thing. They store an amount of either crops or water and gives a comparator signal strength depending on how many crops or water is in it. The Cauldron holds water and can store up to 3 bottles of water, which is a signal strength of 1 to 3. Then the Composter holds crops and can hold up to 7 crops but has a signal strength of 1 to 8. Why is it 8 instead of 7? Well, because it basically skips 7 and goes to 8, because if you put 7 crops into it, it'll turn into bone meal, and that makes the signal strength go to 8. And there's another redstone function with the composter. If you put a hopper going into it with crops, it'll automatically fill the composter with crops until it's at 7. In which case, if there's a hopper under it, when it turns into bone meal, it'll grab the bone meal from the composter and it repeats the process, effectively making an automatic bone meal farm in 1 block-ish. Number 41 to 45, all rails and minecarts. Rails and minecarts aren't really redstone, and really the only thing of redstone is the rails as wire, but I still gotta explain them because it's in the redstone tab. First off, the regular rail is just that. It's a rail that can carry minecarts when placed on top of it. The rail can go any direction if there's 2 rails going off of 1 turn. If the rail is powered, it'll switch to the other turn. Then the minecart can be placed on top of the rail, and if you hold forwards, the minecart will get an extra push from player inputs. Then the powered rail is just a booster rail, so you can actually move the minecart automatically, like for a long railway or going uphill. Powered rails can be powered from 8 blocks away, which means 1 power source can power 17 rails at the same time. However, they cannot turn, so you have to use a regular rail to turn it. Then there's the detector rail, which detects when a minecart is overridden and will give out a signal when it does so, which means the detector rail can be placed before a powered rail to automatically activate it. And now finally, there's the activator rail, which gives the power to the minecart above it, and it's useful for later for the other minecarts, but for a player or entity, if a minecart is holding an entity and it passes over the activator rail, it'll eject the entity. Number 46 to 47, container carts. These are the chest and hopper minecarts. The chest minecart is exactly that, the chest of the minecart. Don't really need to explain more on that. However, if a container minecart is on a detector rail, and if you put a comparator going off of the rail, it'll give an output depending on how full that container is. Then for the hopper minecart, again it's exactly that, a hopper and a minecart, but it's got 1 extra feature. A hopper minecart can empty out a container at a full 20 game ticks, so it can empty out at 20 items per second. However, it can only drop at the normal rate of a hopper if a hopper is under it, because the regular hopper bottlenecks the hopper minecart's hopper. And because it's just a hopper and a minecart, if you power it using an activator rail, it'll stop incoming items. Also, if the cart has items in it, it'll be slower than if it was empty. Number 48, furnace minecart. The furnace minecart is not for cooking food, however, it's for being an actual engine cart, like for a real train. So if you put in some fuel, it'll start moving for 3 minutes at 4 blocks per second. The speed is capped though, so if it's going downhill or on powered rails, it'll just stay at 4 blocks per second. And for each fuel you put in there, it'll add another 3 minutes to the range until it's at the limit of 27 minutes. If you connect the minecart to the back of it, it'll attempt to work as a train, but it also seems to be one of the most buggiest things ever, and I would just stick to using powered rails, honestly. Number 49, TNT minecart. TNT minecart is a minecart with TNT in it. The main way to explode is by activator rail, but there's also other ways to activate it, such as falling 3 blocks, being destroyed while moving, or being hit by anything with fire. That's about it with this. It's just a minecart with TNT. However, if you stack it, bonus, TNT minecart stacking, somewhat Java. TNT minecart stacking is when you spawn more than 1 TNT in 1 rail. Then if you push them all at once, it's basically a nuke. The only reason why this is somewhat Java is because I don't know if this is a feature in Bedrock. Number 50 to 51, chest boats. The chest boat, again, super straightforward. It's a boat with a chest on it. The raft is the exact same. I don't know why they include both the boat and the raft in the redstone tab, but they do. And because it is a storage entity, hoppers can interact with it. So the main usage for it is moving items quickly from one point to another by using a chest boat in the middle of 2 hoppers. So if your circuit benefits from it, then there you go. Other than that, probably don't be spamming entities keys everywhere in your redstone. Number 32 to 33, doors. Wooden doors can be opened via right-clicking. Iron doors cannot and will only be opened via redstone inputs. Wooden doors can also allow redstone inputs, but iron doors require it to open. That's basically a door is a door. Number 54, fence gate. Fence gate is basically a fence but a door. That's the easiest way I can explain it. It's a door but as a fence. Everything in the wooden door applies to this as well. Number 55 to 56, trapdoors. The trapdoor, again, is a door but now sideways and half height. Everything applies here as well. There's wooden and iron trapdoors, but now trapdoors can be used after a ladder to act as a ladder as well. So if you have a ladder then a trapdoor, the trapdoor will act as a ladder. Number 57, TNT. TNT is a bomb. I don't know what else to say. TNT is just a bomb that takes 4 seconds to explode after ignited. It ignites from flint and steel or burnt from anything it sets fire. And if TNT blows up another TNT, it'll take 0.5 to 1.5 seconds to explode. Number 58, redstone lamp. A redstone lamp is exactly the name. It's a lamp that you can turn on or off. The only cool thing about it is that it turns on instantly and turns off in 2 ticks. Apart from that, it's just a light source that you can turn on or off, so it's used in displays. Number 59, bell. It's a bell. That's it. It can be powered from redstone as well. It's just a bell. I don't know what else there is to say, honestly. Number 60, big Dripleaf. Why is this even the redstone tab? It has nothing to do with redstone. Oh, if you power it, prevents it from dripping. I see. Okay. The Dripleaf is basically a block that will drop down if an entity is on top of it. However, if you power it, it won't fall anymore, so it becomes safe to stand on. Other than that, it shouldn't be in the redstone tab, just like the bell. If those two are going to be here, then put the brewing stand here because it can interact with hoppers. Number 61, armor stands. Again, shouldn't be here, but it is, so I'll explain it anyways. The armor stand is an entity that displays armor. It can also display items if you edit the data to show hands. And for the reason for it existing is because dispensers can dispense them. If that's the case, put the brewing stand in the redstone tab as well. And now finally, number 62 or 68 if you're 1.21, the thing that started it all, the redstone ore. The only thing redstone ore does, apart from when you mine it, it drops redstone, is give off observer output when it's stepped on or when it's right clicked. What an amazing block to end this video on. So that's every redstone component explained. Now you should go build that door or anything you really want. If you want to see more redstone stuff, you should join my Discord server and get subscribed, because now that I'm making videos again, I'm going to come out with some bangers.